Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to Bishop Talk. We are thankful that you've taken time to be with us today. This month on our Bishop Talk series, we are focusing in on pride as a spiritual gift or a spiritual discipline. And so we got a whole series of individuals that will be speaking this month on that particular topic, as it is Pride Month. And we are honored today to have with us a longtime friend, longtime colleague, Reverend Elder Dr. Mona West. I didn't do this before the show started. So how do you want us to refer to you as? I mean, like you just, all my life you've been Mona and Professor Mona, Professor West, and so why don't you do a little bit of a self-introduction and just tell folks what you want us to know about you as we begin today.
Thanks, Robert. Well, as Robert said, Robert and Durrell have been longtime friends of mine. They've actually been students of mine. That gets to let you know how old I am. It's just been a joy to be colleagues with them over the years. So let's see. My background is in biblical studies. That's where I did my doctoral work. A big part of the publishing that I've done and the activism that I've done has been with regard to queer biblical hermeneutics and what it means to take back the word, take back scripture for queer folks, but also how to read the Bible with a queer lens. Um, so that's a lot of what I've done in my career. And I also have a passion for spirituality. And so a lot of the positions that I've held, I'm currently on staff as the director of Christian formation at St. David's Episcopal Church in Austin, downtown Austin. And so one of the things that I really enjoy and am passionate about is also spiritual formation and leadership development. So it's been nice over the years and a great privilege and honor to be in places where I've been able to weave those things together and be in a conversation like this one. So I'm glad to be here today. And you can just call me Mona.
Okay, we can do that. Durrell, you want to do anything before we get started? Self-introduce yourself or say anything before we jump into the conversation? Because I want to reference a couple books that Mona was part of that she did not mention just yet, but she may be able to do that as well.
Right. Well, she said "Take Back the Word." That's actually the title of a book she edited.
Mhm.
And it's some commentary there. But no, I'm Durrell Watkins. I'm the senior minister of the Sunshine Cathedral. I am a auxiliary bishop of the Global Justice Institute. I am the current president of the Divine Science Federation, and I get to help out on this show. So that's some of the stuff I got going on.
Well, awesome. Well, again, today, folks, we're talking in Pride Month, pride as a spiritual gift or a spiritual discipline. And again, we couldn't think of anyone better that I have known for many years who, to me, has always been kind of grounded in spiritual awareness. And I just put the big spiritual awareness, but a lot of that focus around, how do we discipline ourselves? How do we care for ourselves in ministry? And Mona was the one who brought a big part of that to my ministry. And so just being able to be reminded that we do need grounding, we do need focus, we do need guidance in lots of ways, and probably more important today than ever before, do we need these reminders? And so let's just jump into the conversation. Durrell, I'm going to let you start off, and we'll just keep going from there.
Oh my. Okay. Because Mona has been a pastor and spiritual director and Bible scholar and administrator. So she we can ask her any question from any direction because she's done everything. The but my stuff is when I talk about queer hermeneutics. Uh, First of all, when I talk about queer theology, queer lens, queer hermeneutics, the first pushback I get is, why are you using these big words? These are inaccessible words, and I don't know how to talk about things. I'm not trying to use ridiculous words, but it's what it is. So maybe you can talk about how we can talk about, because these are academic studies, these are fields, but also we want to make it accessible to everybody. So maybe you can talk about how we take these academic concepts and talk about it in pulpits and in coffee conversations and at parties and whatnot, so they get all the good stuff, but they're not turned off immediately by words that sound like, oh, this isn't for me.
Hmm. Uh, I don't know if you have any particular words in mind, but I mean, we've, used the word hermeneutic already,
Right.
queer biblical hermeneutic. And
Yeah, exegesis or just words
yeah,
that
yeah,
are
that,
not, yeah.
yeah. So, I think, a lot of those words like hermeneutics or exegesis, have to do with the way um, it has to do with interpretation. I mean, you could have like a scientific hermeneutic or a biblical hermeneutic or a literary hermeneutic. So it's the word is not so much a religious word as it is a descriptive word about um, what you're engaged in making sense of something. So I guess that would be a good way to I don't know, to say I'm developing a queer biblical making sense of it. But
Right.
but it is that. It's like it's understanding how we interpret things, how things have been interpreted, the history of that interpretation, pointing out um, biases, but also pointing out opportunities for looking at it differently. And so I think that that's just, with regard to the word hermeneutic. I think another word that's come up just in our little conversation here so far is um, spiritual disciplines. That word too, I think it can be kind of loaded because it feels onerous, or it's like
Hmm.
somehow we're supposed to be walking around, flogging ourselves or wearing a hair shirt or whatever, and and so a lot of folks will use the word practice, spiritual practice, and I think that's probably a better word because it is just that it's a something that you do on a regular basis with intention um, that that opens up a spiritual dimension for you. It kind of prepares you for um, and deepens your spiritual journey. And so a lot of things can be a spiritual practice. We think about things like Bible reading or almsgiving or fasting, as spiritual, kind of those classic spiritual practices, but things like gardening or running or appreciating beauty, those are things that can be spiritual practices. And to kind of bring us to our topic, so I think pride, then, having pride, engaging in the practice of cultivating pride is a spiritual practice that opens us, to the divine within us and the divine in others. So I don't know. That might be a long answer to your question, Durrell, but that's
That's good. That's good. You talked about prayer. A few hours ago, I did. It was raining, and I love water. I love rain. I love lakes and oceans, and so it was really strong. So I went out. We have some exercise equipment on the deck. So I went out on the elliptical in the rain, and uh, and that was actually not a lot of discursive thinking, no music, just me in the rain. I have some statues in the garden in front of me, but that was prayer time for me today. That was prayer time, and more as I get older and older, prayer is something other than what I would have said it was 20 years ago.
hmm
That exercising in the rain is one of the ways I pray now.
hmm
Or I remember I haven't been in a bathhouse in 30 years, but I remember some profound prayer experiences in bathhouses because you're there for a while and you're only doing what there to do just a little bit of that time. So what do you do with the rest of the time? Well, it was prayer time for me, and so which is a very queer spirituality, obviously, but I but more and more, yeah, prayer has very little to do with thoughts and words for me, and just about sort of just being present to whatever is to the
hmm
moment of rain or to the moment of exercise or whatever. So can you, and I don't know if that might be helpful for queer people who all things religious kind of are triggering, uh, but there are still ways to commune with whatever it is that's larger than you. So can you talk about that? Can you talk about prayer other than rosaries and prayer books and glossolalia? Can you talk about queer prayer?
Well, I think what's happened for me over the years is that I think you alluded to it some is that as I've gotten older, and as this journey has gotten longer, it's just like it's become just more simple,
Mhm.
and I think Jesus gives the example of the child, his to his disciples and says, unless you become as like a little child, this is to whom the kingdom of God is revealed. And so, uh, yeah, I used to like, um, it's almost like I had this like, I don't know, spiritual resume or checklist, that I had to like check off um, these types of prayer and feeling like I had to master them, like whether like, so if I wasn't like meditating and like having this kind of unitive experience, then it didn't count as prayer. Or if I wasn't like reading the Bible, it wasn't prayer. Or if I wasn't feeling some kind of emotion. And uh, what I've discovered over the time is that um, prayer is a very simple act, and that uh, it's not to be like a checklist or um, because then we make it about us, we make it about our achievement rather than just being present to the divine in the rain, or sitting out on your back porch. I mean, most mornings that's how I pray is with a cup of coffee, watching the birds, out on the back porch, and that usually leads to gratitude or people will come to mind that I'll pray for, or and it's a grounding experience. So sometimes I think um, we or I think systems, structures, or religious institutions, whatever our backgrounds, have made prayer harder than it needs to be. And I usually pray the Lord's Prayer every day, at least once, usually more than once. And that has become such an expansive prayer for me. When you actually look at it on the page, it's like a really teeny teeny prayer. I mean, it doesn't have a whole lot of lines to it, but it's so expansive in terms of what you're asking, um, what you're acknowledging. And it's almost like I was at a retreat a while back. It's been actually several years ago, but I remember the retreat leader talking about the Lord's Prayer, and she said it's kind of like it's a daily coracle. I don't know if coracle is like those ships that the Celts would get in. They would and the Celtic monks, they would enclose themselves in this coracle and just cast themselves out into sea, and just, it would take them wherever uh, it would go, and that's where they would wind up. But uh, she said it's kind of like a coracle. You just kind of get in it, and just that's the prayer that just kind of takes you through your day. And uh, so I don't know. So those are just some thoughts around prayer.
You mentioned,
I will say, you talked about take back the word. I mean, I think queer people need to, yeah, take back prayer
mm,
Mhm.
and to
mm,
take back
mm.
spirituality. Um, yeah.
You mentioned about kind of the centering moments for prayer and finding the right place. I remember once Durrell and I was traveling to a certain spot that was a hot spot for vortexes. And we're out in the desert. We're walking around, and Durrell is just vortexing all over the place. Like, oh, can you feel it? He's having a vortex experience. And I'm like, I can't feel a thing. I'm praying, I'm centering, I'm laying on this
Stand here. Come stand exactly where I am. Stand next to me right
and
now.
hold my hand and stand there. Nothing. I'm laying on the rocks, getting dirty, just trying to connect with nature. Watching scorpions go crossing the desert and everything. Nothing out there in this whole place. A couple of years ago, we ended up. over in Amsterdam on a river cruise. But we found our way to the I don't know if the cathedral, but to well Hildegard, uh,
Mm.
Because we were going up the Rhine, so
up
this
the
was a
Rhine
stop in
River.
Germany.
Hildegard Bingen.
Yeah.
Yep, we
And
were there.
so, I mean, it's to set this up a little bit. I mean, it's raining. We're walking in the rain. There was no Uber to get us to where we had to just walk. And so, part of that service, like I thought we was going to the Hildegard Winery. Well, that wasn't where we ended up. We ended up where at the church,
At
but
the church.
at the church itself.
Mm.
And I just remember as soon as I walked in, I looked at the rest and said, "Can you feel that?" And I don't, and I guess it was just like an experience walking into that space of,
Hmm.
of experiencing presence, awareness, centeredness, and just being in a moment. So I guess my question for you is all that is how. I mean, it's almost like there's no perfect place to have that experience, but it's more about finding the place of being in the moment or letting the moment find you for when you're getting that type of spiritual energy or connection, or that charge, if you will.
Mm. Yeah, I think it's both and. I mean, I think, certainly people make pilgrimage, to holy places. I mean, there are places I think, yeah, they're like a vortex or that a thin place, and so that have just been recognized as such over the centuries by people. And so people make pilgrimage to those sites because of, just I think something that's connected to them. It's interesting. I think there's something about the site itself, but I think people going to it and seeking it out also kind of adds to its
Mm,
holiness. Um, my uh, um, spouse and I, we go to Santa Fe every year. And I mean, we used to. We haven't since COVID haven't been as much as we would like, but and we always make pilgrimage to this little church in Chamayo, and it's known for its healing. There's a kind of an antechamber to the little uh, sanctuary that has dirt in it that's healing dirt. And so people, I mean, that antechamber has crutches and pictures of people who've been healed and stuff. And so folks just make pilgrimage there often to get some of that dirt. And so I do think that there are those places that have that kind of energy. But I also think that we can prepare ourselves, and I think it goes back to this idea of spiritual disciplines or practices or cultivating mindfulness, that when we have a regular rhythm or practice or cultivate an awareness um, of our own um, inner journey or our interior life, um, that that those moments can happen anywhere,
mm,
and
mm.
that um, it's just and you're able to see them or experience them or feel them when you've sort of done. I don't want to say um, it's not like you're producing those moments, but
Right.
but
Mm.
um, you're prepared, when they occur. You notice them,
Hmm.
and I think you're able to notice them because there has been some kind of uh, previous work that's opened your spirit up to that. And I think that's what spiritual disciplines do or practices.
Mm.
I was saying earlier about decidedly queer places being places of prayer for me
Hmm.
when I was younger, and and then simple places like I've been on the Jersey Shore and thought that I was seeing a glimpse into heaven, and so yeah, they do sort of sneak up on you, I guess, these moments and places. But uh, when I think of holy places, I think of Pulse, where
Mm.
49 queer people died, and that was meant to be a safe place. That was meant to be a queer, consecrated place, and it was defiled. Um, and lives were lost, including the attacker. And so can you talk about queer shrines, queer places, sacred places? Cults didn't start out to be like a shrine; it was just meant to be a safe place. But then, because of martyrdom, the blood of the martyrs is there. I can't help but think of that as a shrine.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess, one that, and I haven't been in a long time, but one that comes to mind for me is the Castro,
Mm.
Mm,
I think that's a place, um, that has a lot of history. It was a place where queer people could, gather and discover their identity, a time when, it was still, against the law to be, homosexual. Um, so, that's one that comes to mind. I'm also reminded too, it's been a while since I've read her work, but Marcella Althus Reed,
mm,
who is a brilliant queer scholar from Latin America, she wrote a book called The Queer God, and in that book she talks a lot about queer sacred places like bars,
right.
and
A
uh,
rosary in your pocket at the gay bar, and yeah,
yeah.
she was.
Yeah,
She,
yeah. I think pride parades can be that,
Mhm.
I think um and like you said, Durrell, I think bathhouses could be that. I think um yeah, I was trying to think of kind of a lesbian equivalent of that. So, music festival. You know.
right.
You know, I remember going to that. I mean, when I lived in Atlanta, I think it was the Southern Women's Music and Comedy Festival, and I think Robin. Oh shoot, what's her last name? She's good friends with Troy Perry. Robin
Tyler.
Tyler. Yeah, Robin Tyler was a producer of that. But I just remember in the 80s going to that, and I was newly out or just trying to come out, and yeah, I just felt like I was uh, died and gone to heaven,
Yeah.
just to kind of be in that kind of uh, woman only, just free space and to hear the music and um, yeah, so those are just some ones that come to mind. Yeah.
Yeah, my first pride parade, my first gay bar, my first drag show. These are all in
Oh
my
yeah,
mind.
drag show. Mhm.
It's like first communion and confirmation. I mean, they were in there with that sort of blessed memory, with
Yeah.
those things. So
Hmm.
yeah,
Hmm.
the you mentioned Marcella Althus Reed and you mentioned Troy Perry and the same little story there, and that reminds me of there's this false dichotomy, and not just for queer folks. I think for almost everybody that you think, okay, there's real spirituality, there's walking with God, there's hearing from God, there's prophetic, real, heartfelt spirituality like Troy, and then there's this, sort of academic and scholarly and researchy, and you don't even have to have a religious bone in your body to do those things, So this scholarly stuff like Marcella, and then of course there's people like you who foot in both worlds. Can you sort of help dispel this false dichotomy that intellect is not spiritual and that spirituality is not smart? I mean, can you sort of just break that down for people to let the people know there's more than one way to explore mystery and the divine?
Hmm.
Oh goodness. Hmm. Well, I think it is unfortunate that there seems to be this dichotomy between kind of like I guess, spirit and mind, or spirit and intellect. Kind of like, we also talk about the the body spirit split. You could kind of, but I think I'm just reminded of well, I think um, the intellectual piece of that. It's like people had to have those experiences before anybody could intellectualize them,
Hmm.
or
Mm,
study them or research. I mean, when you look at kind of the research world, I mean, that's what scholars and researchers do is that they go to places where folks are experiencing these
Yeah.
things. And then the scholar or the researcher um, uh, helps to give voice to that,
Yeah.
or um, sort of captures that in a way that makes it accessible to the rest of the world. And uh, and so, I mean, you have to have both, I think. You
Yeah.
can't have one without the other. And I just am so grateful that when I first started coming out, that there were books written by scholars, but also religious people. I mean, I'm thinking of John Fortunato, his book, Embracing the Exile, the work of, oh God, why am I blanking on his name? Not Touching Our Strength.
That's Carter.
That's Carter. Yeah, Carter Hayward, but she's one. And then he's a member of your parish. Why am I blank?
John
His
McNeil.
Father
John
John
John.
McNeil.
McNeil. Yeah, I don't know why I couldn't bring his
Yeah.
name up, but folks like that who were, writing about the experience, so that people who thought they were all alone, I'm the only one who feels this way, um, would have access to
Yeah.
say, well, I'm not the only one, and oh, this is, I have more information about how to make sense of this or how to move through the world with this.
Yeah.
And so I think they're both needed,
Yeah.
and that really is like a false dichotomy, and that I mean, I think you can, be a scholar of religion and not necessarily, uh, I don't know, like identify with a particular denomination or religion.
Hmm.
And I think you can also, well, we talk about, folks that are spiritual but not religious. You can also be a very spiritual person, but not uh, read books about it.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah. And I mean, I think all of us went to Sunday school or vacation Bible school or church camp hundreds of years before we went to graduate school. I
Mhm.
mean, so it's not like we just, stumbled into a library one day and started like yeah, something made us care about that to start with.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think, you mentioned Sunday school, it just kind of triggered something. I mean, we probably all have had that spiritual grounding or introduction to, my my Sunday school was all about John 3:16, and you quote the scripture and you get a quarter. So that was how we learned scripture as growing up. But one of the things that I'm wondering, and Mama, maybe you can speak a little bit to this about, we are very in unique times right now, different times right now. And I was wondering if you can speak to the importance of having spiritual practices. We're in a lot of political stuff right now. We're in a lot of social justice stuff right now. Our trans community is being targeted. The gay community is being targeted. Lots of people on the margins are being targeted for various reasons. People who didn't think they would find themselves on the margin are now in the margins, and for various reasons. So I just wonder if you can maybe just talk for a minute about the importance of it, of having some type of spiritual discipline or developing a spiritual practice. And I like how you alluded to earlier about a lot of the things that we have come based on our experiences. And so maybe experiences leads to our spiritual practice of what we need to develop. So maybe just kind of echo on that just a little bit about the importance of that.
Yeah. Well, it's like I mentioned earlier. I mean, there's certainly those classical spiritual practices that we think about, like uh, scripture reading or prayer or almsgiving or whatever, or fasting. But I, I, I I think a spiritual practice is anything that's done with intentionality, um, that opens us up to ourselves and to the divine, however you describe that, or name that. And so I think uh, just paying attention to what it is then that does that. I mean, I think we've said earlier. I think maybe for some people it might be exercise, or it might be gardening, or it might be being in community in intentional ways, or it might be um, uh, yeah, going to places where you can be yourself, whether it's a bar or a trans event or whatever. So I think it's about paying attention to what are those practices that are life-giving to me, and then doing them with intentionality, because I think that's the other piece of spiritual practices is that they need to be regular and they need to be with intention. And I mean that doesn't mean you have to like set up a whole guilt trip, if you don't do it, or if you haven't, if you say I'm going to do this every day. I mean, don't kind of get yourself in a I don't know, kind of a guilt trip situation, but just be mindful about what is your intention, and just to do that on a regular basis. I mean, I don't know, it might be once a month, it might be once a week. Daily would be great, but and it takes time too to discover, like I said, what that might be, and what that practice might be. And what I've also learned over the years is that um, there usually will come a time when that practice um, is that I need to just let go of it, that it's kind of um, I don't want to say served its purpose, but it's like it's I just need to kind of move on to something else or something. And so I give yourself permission too to try different practices on. Some are going to kind of speak to you while others aren't. And and then it's okay to like just step away. I mean, I uh, have been in spiritual direction. We haven't really talked about spiritual directors, but I think that would be a great practice to have. I mean, I think there are people out there who are spiritual directors or spiritual companions that come from a variety of backgrounds. I mean, I just taught a course at Seminary of the Southwest last fall on sacred scripture for formation and ministry. And I had a trans person in there. I had a person who didn't believe the Bible in there. I had uh, uh, somebody who was kind of more affiliated with the Buddhist tradition, but they were all seeking training to be a spiritual companion or a spiritual director for for others. And so I think finding a spiritual guide would be a great practice to have. And and so where I was going with that was I have been uh, had a spiritual director for probably over 20 years now. I mean, not the same one, but I mean, different ones. One person for about 10 years, another person for about 9.5 years. But there have been those times where I have just thought, I just need to step away from spiritual direction. I'm kind of, you know, um, I've kind of run out of things to talk about. I think I'm just going to take a break. And so I've done that. And then I've known, it's about time to kind of get back into that practice again, because I miss, that I'm a little further along on my journey now and have some more things I want to say to somebody about it. So that's just an example of kind of having a practice, stepping away, and then maybe coming back to it. So.
I'm aware of the time, so I don't want to keep you all day. Actually, I do, but I'm disciplined enough to not do that. So our focus is pride, and we've sort of been doing a shaman's dance all around it. But I want to get sort of head on. I think of like the Speaker of the House who weaponizes religion particularly against queer folk. The state of Oklahoma, the state of Texas, the state of Florida, with things like state of Louisiana, things like these Bible courses and Ten Commandments and don't say gay, all these ridiculous laws. And the gaslighting of, oh, the Ten Commandments are just, they're just a moral code. They're universal, except the first three or four, depending on how you number them, are all about the Hebrew God. How is that universal? So I hate it so much. But anyway, that made me crazy. But so religion has been so weaponized, and now even in the hands of government, so weaponized against us. And of course, this creates a lot of shame and fear and guilt and so how and why pride? Like, first of all, of course, you have to have pride to combat that. But how do you get it? And then they gaslight you again and say, well, pride's one of the seven deadly sins.
Yeah.
Shut up. Shut up. Because this isn't arrogance. This is doing all you can to refute the shame, to not buy into the shame, and to be grateful. Queer pride is gratitude for who you are, and determination to stand in your authenticity. So maybe you can talk about the gift of pride, and it is a gift, or maybe it's not a gift. If you have to work so hard to get it, maybe it's just you earned it. But talk about pride, especially in response to the overwhelming attacks to cause us to be ashamed.
Yeah. 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 Well, I think you just like said it. I'm just going to say what he said. Um, well, I think what comes up for me is that it's just to think about pride as a gift or pride as a spiritual practice. I mean, that's a very queer thing. I mean, we talk about that the word queer, that it's to subvert, it's to kind of turn a thing on its head or to push back against traditional hateful interpretations of things. And so I think to see pride as a spiritual gift that's queering pride because, like you said, Durrell, we've been taught, at least in religious circles, not to be prideful, to be humble, to don't be haughty, and um, but um, but to take back pride. I mean, to claim our pride, and yes, to receive it as a gift, but also to offer it as a gift. I mean, I think when we walk through the world, prideful, proud of who we are as LGBTQ plus people, proud of our history, um, proud of our movement, proud of our accomplishments. That's a gift we give to the world, uh, as well as to ourselves and to other people. So I think it's a very queer thing, um, to celebrate pride and to have pride and to who you are. I also think it's a healing thing. I mean, for someone to be proud about who they are in their body as a gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender person or a non-binary person, that's not only healing for that person, but once again, it's healing for the world. It's healing that body spirit split, or it's showing that that people can exist in their bodies in ways that aren't binary, whether it's heterosexual, homosexual, or gay, or straight, or male or female, or whatever. So those are just some thoughts that come to mind. And so I think our pride is subversive, and I think it's okay to think of a gift in that way. you know
Well, I know that you are an avid reader. So as we start to wrap up here, I want to know, what are you reading now? Because I know I'm aware of your bookshelf. I know some of the stuff that was on your bookshelf. So what are you reading right now, Mon? I know you read a lot, and you're doing a lot of research and everything. And so what are you reading now that's got you thinking, that's got you bringing some joy, or just like, oh, this is gonna be fascinating. Let's see where it goes. What are you reading these days?
Oh my goodness. Well, um, I have given myself permission in the last year or two to read more fiction. So I have just over the years, I've always been, I mean, when I've had time to read, I mean, a lot of my reading has been uh, for school or for research or to prepare for a class or whatever. And so I've just really enjoyed reading historical novels. So let's see. I'm just trying to think here. So I finished one. I mean, this is kind of a New York Times bestseller. Kristen Hanna, I think, wrote a novel called The Nightingale, which is about just the story of women in France who rescued downed airmen during the Nazi occupation of France. And then I read a book. I mean, she's written several novels kind of in this genre. Another novel of hers is called The Women, which features the lives of women who were nurses during the Vietnam War. And so historical novels have become really um, uh, meaningful to me in the last couple of years. Geraldine Brooks is another historical novelist that I appreciate. Um, and so a lot of her novels have to do with, I mean, her novel Horse is a New York Times bestseller that really looks at kind of the weaves issues of race and racism with the horse racing industry and in the South. And so I just I think the reason I like those novels is because of their intersectional nature, you
Mm,
know, that to really look at these uh, the, the places where these um, themes or these concepts or these issues overlap. Um, yeah, so what's on my shelf right now, and I've started the introduction, but I can tell I'm going to have to take it in small bites. Judith Butler published just in the last year a book titled Who's Afraid of Gender?
mm,
And
Mm.
she is really looking at, I mean, she's, you know, of course, Judith Butler, you know, is really the kind of the mother, you know, of queer theory. I mean, she's the one that really developed queer theory, and in particular around gender and how gender is related to performance.
mm,
But this book that she's published, it's just been in the last year. She's really looking at how, yeah, really the notion of gender, that just everything is related to it in terms of um, uh, and why this current administration is so adamant to attack around issues of gender.
mm.
So like I said, I've just started it, and uh, I I'm going to have to take it in small small bites.
Butler has never been an easy read for me, even the old stuff. So yeah, you gotta work with Butler.
Yeah, yeah.
Or me, maybe I'm just, that's my. But I mean, I've had to, like, even in school, like sometimes you get performativity and all that you had to, but it's never been one you just skate through.
Right. Right.
Wow. Well, Moan, I want to thank you for taking time to spend with us for a few minutes,
So
and
much.
always good to see you and connect with you. And I got a page of notes over here, so I've got rabbits to chase just off this conversation that we had in this short period of time. So this conversation has been very beneficial to me, and a good reminder about things I need to remind myself around spiritual practices and disciplines and things like that. So thank you very much for that. And any parting words or good thoughts for our folks as we get ready to sign off?
Oh, well, just thank you for doing this series. I think it's really important to gather voices, from different perspectives to talk about um, these issues and to provide a word of hope, in these troubling times. So I'm glad to have had my voice be a part of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for watching. Of course, you can always find our videos available at sunshinecathedral.org. Just click on one of the bishop pages and you'll see our long list of interviews and series right there. But we would definitely be adding this conversation today with Mona West to our series as well. Thanks a lot, everyone. Have a great day.